My name is Claire Bennett, and on the night I married the man I thought I loved, I believed I was about to surprise him with something innocent, playful, something that would make us laugh for years. The reception had just ended. Guests were still downstairs, drinking champagne and dancing under soft golden lights, convinced they were celebrating the beginning of a perfect marriage. I slipped away quietly, my wedding dress brushing against the hallway walls as I headed toward the bridal suite. My heart was light, almost giddy. I wanted to do something silly, hide under the bed, wait for my husband to come in, and scare him. A childish prank, nothing more. The room smelled faintly of roses and expensive cologne. I laughed silently to myself as I lifted the edge of the bedspread and carefully lowered myself onto the carpet beneath. The space was tight, the world reduced to shadows and muffled sounds. I held my breath, smiling, imagining his startled reaction. Minutes passed. Then the door opened. I expected laughter. I expected footsteps, maybe his voice calling my name. Instead, I heard another woman's heels clicking against the floor. My smile froze. I stayed perfectly still, my body suddenly tense, my heartbeat pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. Through the narrow gap beneath the bed, I saw two pairs of shoes stop near the edge, his polished black ones and hers. Slim, unfamiliar, undeniably feminine. Their voices dropped, intimate, careless. "She has no idea," the woman said softly, almost amused. My husband laughed, a sound I knew well, a sound that now felt like it belonged to a stranger. "She never will," he replied. "The marriage is just convenient." The word convenient sliced through me. I felt my throat tighten, my hands press into the carpet, as if anchoring myself to reality. I told myself I must be misunderstanding, that this couldn't be happening, that this was some cruel coincidence. But then he said something that shattered every illusion I had walked down the aisle with just hours earlier. "My mother made this match happen perfectly," he continued. "Money, inheritance, appearances. Claire was the safest choice." Safest? Not loved, not chosen, managed. Under that bed, still wearing my wedding dress, I realized the truth. I wasn't a wife. I was a transaction. And the night I thought would mark the beginning of my life was quietly becoming the moment everything I believed in collapsed. I lay there, frozen beneath the bed, afraid that even breathing too loudly would expose me. My wedding dress felt heavier with every second, like it was pressing the truth into my skin. Above me, the two people I trusted least continued talking, unaware that the woman they were betraying was close enough to hear every word. "She'll play her role," the woman said, her voice smooth and confident. "Sweet, loyal, predictable. Exactly what your family wanted." My husband sighed, almost bored. "She's grateful for everything. That's what makes this easy. She won't question things." I wanted to scream. I wanted to crawl out and confront them, demand answers, demand respect. But my body refused to move. Shock wrapped around me like chains. Then came the part that broke something deep inside my chest. "We'll wait a year," he continued. "Once the trust funds are unlocked, we can file for divorce. Clean, quiet. She'll get a settlement, enough to keep her calm." The woman laughed softly. "You really planned everything." "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I had to." Had to. As if marrying me wasn't a choice, but a burden he carried for profit. I stared at the underside of the bed, my eyes burning, my hands shaking. Every memory replayed itself in my mind. The proposal, his promises, The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. None of it was love. It was strategy. Then I heard him say my name. Claire trusts me completely. That was the moment I understood something terrifying. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was calculated. They moved closer together. I could see her shoes turn toward his, inches apart. I knew if I stayed another second, I would fall apart completely. So I did the only thing I could to survive. I waited. I memorized every word, every tone, every detail. Because somewhere between the roses, the lies, and the wedding vows, a quiet plan began forming in my mind. And I promised myself one thing. If they thought I was just a pawn in their game, they were about to learn how dangerous a silent woman can become. I didn't confront him that night. That was the first decision I made as a different woman. I climbed out from under the bed only after they left the room, my legs numb, my heart beating so loudly I was sure the walls could hear it. I sat on the floor in my wedding dress until dawn, replaying every sentence, every laugh, every careless word that had slipped from their mouths. By morning, the tears were gone. Something colder had taken their place. At breakfast, I smiled. I poured him coffee the way I always did. I laughed at the same jokes. I thanked him for being such a wonderful husband in front of his parents, who watched me with approval and pride. And while everyone admired how calm and graceful I seemed, my mind was quietly cataloging facts, dates, documents, conversations, patterns. I began to notice things I had ignored before, how his phone never left his side, how money moved between accounts without explanation, how certain emails were always deleted, certain calls always taken outside. I didn't ask questions. Instead, I listened. I started volunteering to handle paperwork. I offered to organize finances to take stress off his plate. He agreed too quickly, grateful, careless, convinced I was exactly who he believed me to be. Trusting, unaware, safe. At night, when he slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how long he had been planning this. Weeks? Months? Before the proposal? Before he ever said my name like it meant something? The answer didn't matter anymore. What mattered was timing. I met quietly with a lawyer recommended by a friend who didn't ask too many questions. I showed her what I had. She didn't look surprised, only impressed. "You're not emotional," she said carefully. "No," I replied. "I'm prepared." Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. All the while, they grew careless. His confidence grew. Her presence crept closer into our lives. Casual mentions, accidental meetings, smiles that lingered too long. They believed the story was already written. They didn't realize I was rewriting it line by line. The moment that changed everything came one evening when he sat across from me, swirling wine in his glass, and said calmly, "I think we rushed into marriage." I nodded. "I think so too," I replied softly. The relief on his face was instant. That was when I knew. They thought I was ready to disappear quietly. What they didn't know was that I had already chosen how and when the truth would surface. And when it did, it wouldn't be whispered behind closed doors. It would be impossible to ignore. The truth didn't arrive loudly. It didn't slam doors or raise its voice. It walked into the room the way I had learned to, calmly, deliberately, without asking for permission. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and old paper, a place where stories were reduced to facts and feelings were expected to sit quietly in the back row. I sat straight, hands folded, listening as if this wasn't my life being unfolded piece by piece in front of strangers. Across from me, he looked confident, almost relaxed, as though this was just another meeting he would walk out of unchanged. He still thought I would break. He still thought I would cry, beg, explain myself too much. When his lawyer spoke, the words were sharp and rehearsed. Claims of misunderstanding, exaggeration, coincidence. A narrative carefully built on the assumption that I was emotional, unstable, unreliable. Then my lawyer stood up, and everything slowed. She didn't rush. She didn't dramatize. She simply began placing facts on the table. Documents, timelines, messages, financial records. Each one quiet on its own, but devastating together. I watched his face change. First confusion, then irritation, then something close to fear. When the recordings played, his voice, careless and amused, speaking about plans he assumed would never reach daylight, the room went completely still. The woman he thought would replace me avoided eye contact, suddenly very interested in the floor. His mother, who had once spoken of me as temporary, sat frozen, her lips pressed thin, as if silence could erase what was now undeniable. No one looked at me. They didn't need to, because I wasn't the one on trial anymore. I didn't speak until the judge asked me directly if I wished to add anything. I stood slowly, not to accuse, not to humiliate, not to explain myself. I trusted, I said simply, and when I realized that trust had been mistaken for weakness, I chose to observe instead of react. That was all. I sat down, and in that moment, I felt lighter than I had in months. The ruling came later. Fair, balanced, final. Assets reallocated. Lies stripped of their protection. Consequences assigned where they belonged. I walked out legally intact, financially secure, and emotionally detached from a story that no longer owned me. He tried to speak to me outside. Apologies spilled out in fragments. Regret shaped by loss, not understanding. I listened politely, nodded once, and walked past him without responding. Because there was nothing left to say. What hurt him most wasn't the outcome. It was the realization that I had survived him, that I had rebuilt quietly, that I had chosen dignity over destruction, that I had left without needing his permission to become whole again. Today, my life is quieter, not empty, intentional. I trust myself now. I choose carefully. I move forward without needing witnesses to validate my strength. And sometimes, late at night, I think about the woman I was, the one who believed love meant endurance, and I wish I could tell her this. Silence can be strategy, patience can be power, and being underestimated is often the greatest advantage of all. Thank you so much for watching and supporting her hidden heart. He still thought I would break. He still thought I would cry, beg, explain myself too much.